This is the first in a series of quick start guides. The quick start guides will hopefully give you just enough information to get you going. Have a look later for some more detailed information about each section. So this quick start is about importing, so just the basics you need to know to import some clips onto the timeline. So to do that, I've already opened Mistika and I've got myself into a project. You'll see that along the control tabs, the menu tabs along the bottom, there's an import tab. So to import, we simply use the file browser navigator down here to find our way to whatever it is that we want to import. So I have a folder called Stuff here, and in here are a couple of different types of files. Generally, if the file types are bright in their naming, it means that Mistika recognizes them and is ready to load them. If you see them dulled out, there's none here actually, then it's a file type that Mistika doesn't recognize, which might just be a name thing. It looks at the extension of the file. So here, for example, I've got a couple of movie files. I've also got an R3D file, and you can see that by clicking on a name and with the source monitor enabled here, dragging the little search bar, I can review the contents of the file. So to bring the clip to the timeline, firstly, this little fella here is a cursor. I'm just tapping down. So wherever it lands is where the clip is going to be imported to on the timeline. Although, of course, we can always move it later. So to import something, simply double click it and this dialog appears. What this dialog is asking us to do is to say what we want to call the reference to our imported file and where we want to put it. These are standard directories that are made by Mistika when it creates the project. We'll look at those in detail later. The default location for media is under data, and by default the file name it will give it will actually match the file name of the imported file. And then simply I just choose whether, in this case because it's a movie file, whether I want to link it as an interlace sequence or a progressive sequence. The only difference being that Mistika will set a flag as to how it processes it later. So in this case I'm just going to select link as progressive sequence, and you can see that straight away the clip has appeared on my timeline. To be able to see our clip, this here is the monitor cursor. I'm just tapping down and dragging it around, and whatever it touches is what we see. On a standard configuration of Mistika, you'll be looking at three monitors: your left GUI, your right GUI, and your video output monitor. So already you'll be seeing this on the video output of your system. If on the other hand you're working on a system without a video board, perhaps a training system, then you can also make the monitor appear in the GUI. And you can do this by going to the Record Monitor tab here, pressing Menu, and disabling live video. So straight away you get a little preview monitor down here that replicates what was otherwise going to the live output. And if you want that full screen, very simply just double click it and you can have it full screen. If you're using dual GUI, left and right monitors, then this will appear on your right monitor. If you're using a single monitor, then it'll appear over your timeline. Either way, to get rid of it, just double click it and it'll go away again. And also spacebar is start and stop playback. One thing to be aware about when you're importing media to Mistika is, well, actually it's not really importing anything. What it's actually doing is linking to the original file, because the philosophy behind Mistika is that it will try and read and work with all the files in their native formats. That's good because it means we don't have to go through any cross conversions that might affect the quality of the file, and also will delay us starting working. But we also have to be aware that we are linking to the original locations of the files. So for example, if we had a 4K DPX sequence and it was residing on a USB 1 drive, then, well, it's not going to play very quickly, because each time Mistika plays it's going to try and drag 4K DPXs from a USB drive. So it's worth being aware of where your media is located, and in fact before starting a proper project you're more likely to copy it to a central location, perhaps onto your fast disks. Let's import another file, and this time I'm going to look at a file that is in fact a different resolution to the resolution that I'm set. You can see here that I'm set at 1920 1080, and in fact the preview monitor shows that the clip that I've got here is not actually the same resolution. You can see the border around it. It's actually a lower resolution than my current setting. But that doesn't bother us insofar as we can happily load it up onto the timeline. So there it is next to my red clip. So that's an R3D clip. That, on the other hand, is a lower resolution movie file. Mistika doesn't mind mixing different resolutions and different formats on the same timeline. Again, just as part of a quick start thing, we should look at this in more detail at a later stage. But if we do want to bring this up to the resolution, or bring it down if it was a higher resolution, to the project resolution that we're working at, then if we press the FX tab and framing, double click it, and then on the parameters, which will come on the right monitor on a dual GUI, simply change set result size as project. Now that'll do a fit to fill between the two, or if you like, you can do a fit X or fit Y. What that will then do is it'll rescale, as you can see, the image to match our resolution. So you can see here with the monitor cursor only looking at the lower clip that our clip is not the full resolution, and as soon as it's gone through here you can see it's been the resolution's been increased, and obviously we can just play that straight away. So far we've been importing movie files. If we want to import an image sequence, again that's pretty straightforward. Just go back to import. So in here I have a folder full of EXR files. I can just click any one of them and Mistika will recognize it straight away as being part of a image sequence. So to import it, it's the same process. Just click any file, doesn't really matter which one it is, as long as it's a continuous number, Mistika will recognize it as a sequence. Double click, and again all the same options, except we have an extra one here which says whether I want to link this as a progressive sequence of images, an interlaced sequence of images, or actually I genuinely only want that one frame that I'm looking at. In this case I want the whole sequence. So as you can see, it's actually quite a short sequence, so I'm just going to expand my timeline. So you can see there it's given me a single clip which has the EXR sequence all put together. It's also worth quickly referencing the media browser at this point. Again, we'll look at this in more detail in a proper tutorial. If you're on a dual GUI, then just double clicking a blank part of the timeline will bring up the media browser on the right hand monitor. If you're on a single GUI, then you can just click media here and this button will make it full size. Either way, what you can see is that the clips that we were importing, you can see have their references here. So if we want to load them again, for example, if I were to delete them off the timeline, I could easily go back to my media browser and just double click them and bring them back in, or bring in multiple instances if I wanted to. So that's the end of the quick start look at importing. Do have a look at the proper tutorial that will go through every aspect of importing, and the next quick start will be how we can manipulate these clips and begin to work with them.